I were to ask you to tell me the greatest story you know, you'll most likely regale me with something from your childhood, or maybe a story from someone else, or even a story that is not connected to you at all. Storytelling can change your perspective on everything. You can spin a narrative where one character being the worst thing you've ever laid your eyes on, but when you get 3 filler episodes telling you how they became this way, you start to see them differently. It may not change how you feel about them, but you begin to become more understanding. And the beauty behind telling any story is that it comes in many forms. From music to movies to TV shows, books, video games, letters, paintings, architecture, stairs, body language, scars, even perfection. Without the ability to tell a story, most historic events wouldn't be known, and many aren't known if it weren't for art forms, scriptures, wonders of the world. However, a narrative can be changed and reshuffled to give you a different story. The Netflix series Kaleidoscope allows you to watch any episode from 1 to 8 in any order, but they suggest to leave the final one for the ending. It's a good example of building a narrative and telling a story, since the final episode is something that ties all the narratives together to give you an ending. There's a story behind everything. I have a story, and so do you. So allow me to spin you a tale about pushing a narrative in certain games. There will be many spoilers for these here if you haven't played or watched any of them, but plan to, then avoid their sections. Let's start off by talking about the Far Cry series, since their villains happen to be the most likable ones out of so many games, and it happens to be a series I enjoy a lot despite it being from Ubisoft. And we can't talk about Far Cry without talking about Voss, arguably the best antagonist in the entire series. Voss is a man who was manipulated and brainwashed until he became a secondary to the main boss that no one even knows his name. This is one of the rare moments where the silver medal is more known than the gold. And the fact that Voss was supposed to be a side character you wouldn't care to look at twice, it's impressive that Michael Mando delivered such a performance that they were forced to cast him in a bigger role than what he was supposed to provide. But then we have Pagan Min, who at first glance you'd think he just came out of a pride parade, but make no mistake that he is as ruthless as they come. Being a lieutenant for his father, who was a low-level drug dealer in a massive trade, he was known as Gang Min. After his father's passing, he took his place and claimed the moniker Pagan, naming himself after the Bermuse king who killed his father for power. Pagan began his expansion and started carving a bigger piece for himself in the drug trade. Of course, being as flamboyant as he is, the old guard had enough of his antics and decided it's time for him to go. He found Kirat, a state on the verge of collapse where the royal family are on a losing battle, and the only heir to the throne couldn't get into his castle. With the help of Pagan and his small army, he takes control of the castle and kills the only heir, then seizes the throne for himself. Due to this, the Golden Path was assembled by Mohan Gale, who later sent his wife Ishwari as a spy, despite her requesting that she fights alongside the Golden Path. Mohan refused the idea due to her being a woman. The unexpected turn of events is that Ishwari was a successful spy. Not only has she relayed crucial information to the Golden Path, but she was able to figure out how many inches Pagan was carrying. After forming a relationship with him, she gave birth to her second child, a daughter named Lakshmana, who was killed by Mohan for unknown reasons. Most likely jealous because he wanted Pagan for himself. This resulted in Ishwari killing Mohan and leaving Kirat with her son AJ. Years later, after AJ became an adult, he makes his return to Kirat to spread his mother's ashes next to her daughter, and this is where things become interesting. At the introduction of Pagan, you see him as a tyrant, a man who will kill without cause. He asks you not to move, and afterwards he will take you to your mother's grave, and if you do what he says, he will tell you that Kirat belongs to you, and you lead it now. And that's the secret ending of the game. However, if your little fingers twitch and you go through the process of every mission and side quest, you'll come to the conclusion that I and many others came to as well. Nobody is good in this game. Seriously, the only decent character by default seems to be AJ, and it's unknown how he would have ran Kyrat. There's two other leaders who could take over if Pagan is dead and AJ doesn't know that he's the heir to the throne. There's Sable, who wants to keep Kyrat as old as possible, with heavy implications at the end that this will become a religious state where anyone who goes against him will be met with death. And then there's Amita, who literally wants to do exactly what Pagan is doing now, except she takes children and inducts them into the Golden Path to be soldiers and believes it's the only way to prevent another Pagan man. So despite the fact that Pagan had a hand in killing his father, seizing a throne to himself, turning Kyrat into a massive drug state ruled by a tyrant that seeks to destroy the Golden Path for killing his daughter, he seems to be the second best option to rule over Kyrat. However, the entire game pushes a narrative that he's the worst person you will meet. But if we look at all narratives, then Sable is a man who's lost an old tradition, same way as Mohan, and that ended poorly because neither of them believe that time changes everything and everyone. Amita is a female version of Pagan, and AJ eventually becomes blinded by a false idea of justice and figures that things can't get worse if Pagan is out of the picture. So if the bar is that low for being a good leader, then elect me as the king of Kyrat. I ran for class president and never ruled with an iron fist, mostly because no one voted for me, but I could have been good. But then we have Joseph Seed, also known as the Father. Growing up in an abusive household, he constantly heard a voice which led him to getting beat by his father. After becoming an adult and leaving his hometown, he continued to talk to the voice, and that got him shunned or fired from several places of business. Somehow, he ended up getting married and having a daughter, and one day, his wife gets into a car accident and tragically passes away. This put his daughter in a critical condition, and as he stood over her, that voice spoke to him again, and he believed it was God. This is where he squeezed his daughter's breathing tube until she passed as well. He then began his cult that we come to know as Eden's Gate. Remember when I said that these villains force themselves to be likable? I actually find Joseph Seed to be an okay antagonist. His actions are horrid. I do not like them at all, nor do I understand his reasons. I also don't think hearing a voice in your head justifies anything. I mean, Pagan Man had a reason to be evil, he lost his daughter and all, but I do believe that someone should have put Joseph away before he hurt anyone. But we reach my second favorite bad guy, Antón Castillo, aka El Presidente. Born in 1954 to Gabriel Castillo, the president of Yara, and the jazz artist Yolanda Rodriguez, he grew up under his father's ruling, and he taught Anton how important for him to be understanding of suffering. He told Anton to be both a lion and a lamb. Many people did not like Gabriel in charge of Yara, so when a communist group threatened his ruling, he took it serious. This group later became known as the Legend of 67, a guerrilla faction, or as they say in the game, guerrilla, who believed that Castillo was destroying their land by working with offshore corporations, and with the help of the exiled communist professor Santos Espinosa, who received support from the Soviet Union and became the guerrilla's leader, they successfully captured Gabriel and the Castillo family. After their imprisonment in 1967, Anton would find comfort by speaking to his father every night through the vents, only for the guerrillas to remove his father's tongue. Anton would witness the torture and execution of his father at the age of 13 by orders of Espinosa. He was also sentenced by the same man to work in the tobacco fields for 15 years. During this time, his mother reminded him that his father had lost everything he built. However, his grandmother saw it differently and pushed the idea that he is a lion and Yarans are lambs. After killing Gabriel, Yara went through great turmoil. While Anton was serving his sentence, Espinosa, who took Gabriel's place, started to show his incompetence by working with offshore corporations and picking up a lot of useless hobbies. After he disgraced himself and passed away, Anton had finished his sentence and saw the struggles of Yara and believed his family are the only ones able to turn it into a paradise. From the year 2000 to 2010, he worked alongside Dr. Edgar as well as the Viviro Society in Biovita to create a chemical known as PG240X that is capable of curing cancer. In 2007, his mother died from breast cancer and Anton learned he had acute acute leukemia, a blood and bone marrow cancer that could be treated but with very low chances of success. Due to this, he decided to have a son in order for him to continue his legacy. And with the death of his mother, this motivated him further to run for presidency and assure his fellow Yarans that he will bring Yara back to its heyday. One of the people who believed in Antón was Clara Garcia. Her name should be of significance considering that she becomes the leader of Libertad, a group that is aimed to take down Antón. History manages to repeat itself. In 2014, Antón won the election and began to rule Yara with an iron fist. Forming a military group of men and women that are known as FND, he began getting rid of fundamental freedoms, forcing propaganda against the Legend of 67, and forcing anyone into labor if they oppose him. And as he made Yara into a paradise again, he was teaching his son Diego the same lessons his grandmother did, by reminding him that he is a lion and Yarans are lambs. So why do we see Antón as the antagonist when he is simply seeking revenge? Why are movies like Kill Bill, Gangs of New York, John Wick accepted when the main character seeks revenge? Why is Kratos considered a good guy if he is seeking to destroy the gods of Olympus in the first 3 games? Narrative. If the main character of Far Cry 6 had been Antón, then we would have had a better game and would have agreed to his methods of revenge despite them putting thousands of people at risk. We sympathize with characters like John Wick for seeking revenge, but he also killed 76 people just to kill one extra guy. And we love it, because that guy was a piece of shit, and I love Keanu Reeves. But from the perspective of so many people in that movie, John was a villain. Kratos killed the god of Olympus and destroyed way more lives doing so, and yet we cheer him on because we saw the story from his narrative. A good movie that blindsides you with its revenge story is Oldboy. The first half of the movie we spent understanding that Daisu was a drunk and his kidnapping was planned, but for unknown reasons. Then we see his desperate plea, his emotional rollercoaster, his desire to understand why him. And the second half of the movie we spend truly understanding why. I won't spoil this movie because I think it's amazing and you should definitely watch it, but it does show both narratives from the perspective of Daisu and Li Wu-jin, who is the antagonist of the movie. But to truly understand 2 perspectives, then you have to witness both unfold at the same time. And this next game does that very well. To tell you a bit about The Last of Us Part 2, it showcases what it means to be both an antagonist and a protagonist simultaneously. We have Ellie, who is seeking revenge on a girl that killed Joel, and she does everything in her power to get it, including but not limited to murder, torture, endangering a child, and sacrificing others. Abby, on the other hand, had gotten her revenge very early in the game, and she does exactly what she had to get it, including but not limited to endangering a child, murder. Hey, wait a minute. This sounds familiar. To tell you the truth, I find both the characters to be an antagonist and a protagonist at the same time. Abby was the villain for a while until I started seeing that Ellie is kind of messing everyone's lives for revenge she doesn't even get. Halfway through the game, Abby finds out where they are hiding and beats Ellie and has a chance to kill her, but chooses not to. This was a turning point for me, the moment I saw that she's willing to let it go. And I see Ellie doing the same thing, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Seeing what she's done throughout the game makes the ending seem like she's copying what the other person did and calling it emotional growth. It's just insulting to the people who played both games. I won't sit here and rant about everything, but Joel had a chance to let the Firefly leader live, and all he said is that she'll come after Ellie again and dismantle the entire force. But for her to watch someone choke on their own blood, interrogate another as they are choking on spores, killing a pregnant lady just to let the person you've been chasing go is such an unsatisfying ending. I'm getting a bit off track, but I'll just say this. Abby was never the villain the game made her out to be. She sought revenge and gotten it, and then got her emotional growth. Ellie was just a shitty person to everyone, but we were blindsided by our own love for her that we decided she's the good force in this game. Fuck it. Next game. Blood Will Tell is based off the Japanese manga Dororo from 1967 to 1968 by the creator Osamu Tezuka, who also created Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, and blackjack. In 1969, nice, the manga received an anime adaptation. It takes place during the Muromachi period in Japan, where a feudal lord has his newborn son organs and limbs sacrificed to the 12 demon gods in exchange of prosperity for his people. The baby was found after being abandoned by a war doctor named Jukai, who specializes in making prosthetic to those who lose them in battle. As the child grows up, he gets attacked by a demon, and this gives him the ability to sense their presence and see silhouette since he had no eyes. In his teenage years, Jukai named him Hikamaru. After defeating his first demon enemy, he regains the ability to feel pain. The doctor provides him with blades and trains the boy until his 18th birthday and sends him off to regain his body from the demons that stole it. And that's what the game is about. It's split into 9 chapters and each one regains a part of Hikamaru's body. However, the game starts off with him regaining his voice and telling Dororo, who he meets early in the game, about his past. So the game starts off with an exhibition dump. The first part of the game is Yodai, a demon with 3 forms that is stealing the villagers' money and keeping the town poor. After defeating all 3 forms, Hikamaru regains his left foot, and man, he is just letting them dogs out for free. I do love the attention to detail since the game starts off in black and white, but after defeating the second demon, you regain your left eye back, then the world becomes more colorful, and each part you regain gives you a bonus from attack power to vitality or speed. The next chapter we have is Dragon Brood. The duo meet a Ronin who has a sword with the same name as the chapter. After Hikamaru defeats him, he runs off, but Dororo follows him and steals his sword. Dragon Brood then speaks to Dororo and asks her to kill to satisfy his thirst. She then attacks the samurai's sister, but Hikamaru stops the blade. Tansuke, the samurai, reclaims the sword. After being defeated again, he sacrifices himself to the sword, then Hikamaru destroys it. Then he regains his spine. However, the sister blames Hikamaru for her brother's death and calls him a murderer as the duo leave her sobbing. In chapter 3, Dororo gets kidnapped, and after being rescued, the duo fight multiple parts of a demon in this area, and after defeating it, Hikamaru gains his sense of pain. Feels like that one should have been saved till a little bit later. In chapter 4, you meet Daigo and Tahomaru. At first, there's not much to look at here, but later you discover that Daigo is your father and Tahomaru is your brother. Your father knows what you're doing. Turns out that killing off the demons that stole your body parts is breaking the deal your father made with them. Your brother threatens to kill you if you interfere with your father's plans. And while he was trained since he was born by multiple samurais, he never had to fight for his life. Hikamaru had to fight to regain his life, his senses. The guy was fighting demons 10 times his size at a disadvantage, only seeing silhouette and still kicking ass. It's safe to say that no human would stand a chance against him, and no one really did. At least not in the anime or even in the game, since any humans end up fleeing. The thing I love about this game is that Hikamaru fights demons and actually terrible people, kind of like John Wick in a way. So I rooted for his revenge massively. Even if I try to see the story from anyone else's perspective, it's difficult to spin this narrative any other way to make Hikamaru sound bad. You were born to a terrible dad that sold your limbs and body parts to demons so he can have corn during winter, and you survived and fought powerful beings to regain your humanity back and ruin your dad's deal? God, you are a terrible son. Next game. Would you kindly like the video and subscribe? God, that's a terrible Irish accent. Bioshock is set in 1960s. You play as Jack, who is the sole survivor of a plane crash in the middle of the Atlantic. Lucky for you, there is a lighthouse nearby, so you swim out to it in hopes of surviving. You discover the entrance to an underwater city of Rapture, a utopia turned dystopia where artists are never afraid to be censored. That was the tagline that drove so many people to trust Andrew Ryan and believe in his vision. And I do have to say that the city is is impressive. I mean, it puts Atlantis to shame, although both of them became sunken cities. One of the characters that help you throughout your journey is an Irishman named Atlas, who is seeking his wife and child that had been hidden in a submarine. Atlas told you to get these plasmades that grant you powers beyond human capabilities. There's Cyclone Trap, Electro Bolt, Enrage, Hypnotize Big Daddy, which sounds like a porn category, Incinerate, Insect Swarm, Security Bullseye, Sonic Boom, Target Dummy, Telekinesis, and finally, Winter Blast. To upgrade any of these powers, you require Atom. Atlas tells you to find and kill these little sisters who are constantly accompanied by a Big Daddy that will literally murder you if you touch the girls. At the same time, Dr. Tenenbaum contacts you and says you can save them and earn less Atom from them, and if you choose either route, you will get a good ending or a bad ending based on what you did to them. Throughout this entire journey, I was pleasantly surprised that Atlas kept being so polite and says "would you kindly" before every quest. Most games just tell you what to do, but he requests it in such a nice way. In a dangerous world like Rapture, filled with splicers and dangerous people, his voice was a guide for Jack. However, when you reach a point where his family dies, he reveals his true identity as Frank Fontaine, a man hungry for power and has been controlling you all along. Eventually, you meet Andrew Ryan in his office, and he pieces together the puzzle that was in front of you all along, that you were born in Rapture 4 years ago. You've been genetically modified to mature rapidly, that you are the bastard child of Andrew Ryan, and that Fontaine purchased your embryo and made you follow any command as long as it's followed or precedes by the phrase "would you kindly?" And your illegitimate father hands you a golf club and gives you the most chilling quote: "A man chooses, a slave obeys," then utters the words, "would you kindly kill?" This was by far the most mind-blowing reveal I've ever had in video games. I mean, most games leave you with an open interpretation. You get to write a narrative after the story. But this was different. And we can all agree that Fontaine was a piece of shit, and thankfully you get to kill him before the ending of the game, so that way you are not left with an unsatisfying ending. But in Bioshock Infinite, which isn't connected to Bioshock 1, you are the bad guy all along. And then there's multiple universes that connect together, and everything is shown to Elizabeth at once, but not Booker, like Schrodinger's cat. But for Booker, he only sees the box. But Elizabeth can see the box, the cat, the alive cat, the dead cat, and Booker with the cat, and Booker without the cat, who, by the way, is also Comstock, but she does kill Booker and in turn Comstock as well, but she uses Booker to kill himself in the future, but he's also alive as well, and she takes you to Rapture, and then there's a prequel DLC that has Booker and Elizabeth in Rapture before it's destroyed, and then again, they were never there, they were never a part of it at all. They just weren't. They're not in the first game. There's no references to them anywhere. Bioshock Infinite has the most confusing ending out of all of them. But the moral of the story is that you're the evil guy in that one. Next game. Considering our next game is re-releasing in a remake soon, let's talk about who was the villain in Silent Hill 2. While many believe that the town is the place of horrors, I would argue that sometimes people in it are far worse and deserve being there. And one of the main characters in the Silent Hill series is James Sunderland. One of my favorites by far, but also a terrible person. The game does leave a lot to interpret with its vague messaging and references, but what is a for sure fact is that James is a bad guy. Some of the reasons why he doesn't come off as evil is because he is very kind and friendly when speaking to others. And even though he killed Eddie Dombrowski in self-defense, he still shows regret, even reiterates to himself in disbelief that he killed a human being. He's also very sympathetic towards the struggles of others, and even tries to be understanding of some of their actions. And what is very clear and apparent, James loved Mary. Even she admitted herself that she was very happy in their marriage until her illness took over. Even she said that she had flaws and outbursts of rage towards James, but he still loved her and took care of her. So he flies under the radar for so many people as to why he is evil. Sadly, in almost every ending, they showcase that he killed Mary for the sake of having free time. He didn't do it for some insurance scam. He didn't do it to end her suffering, despite the fact that he tries to lie to himself and the players before admitting to the truth. I would have been a bit more understanding if he had a solid reason behind it, but no. He killed Mary because he wanted his freedom back. I feel like divorce was a better option. And again, he truly regrets his actions, and he feels guilty towards his desire for freedom. So much so that in one of the endings, he takes Mary's body to the lake and drowns himself alongside her. Another one is that he adopts the little girl in the game because that's what Mary wanted to do by coming to Silent Hill. Many years later, people speculated that James killed his wife recently and that her body is in the trunk of the car. Even the book of Lost Memories alludes to that fact. Mashiro Ito, the art designer, said that she's in the back seat of the car. Even the voice actor for the original game, Guy Seehee, elaborated on Ito's statement by saying that having her body in the back seat is more consistent with Mori Shinju, or in English, forced love suicide. To answer the question, who was really evil, we have to look at these games as art forms, which in many ways they are, which makes them subjective. When Kratos killed Hermes, his body dissolved into a swarm of disease-carrying flies that flew across Olympus, causing many deaths, and Kratos knew that would happen thanks to the free DLC released for the God of War Ragnarok. But the gods weren't the best at the time. But the counter to that is that things become far worse without them. In a perfect world, Kratos kills the gods, everyone is fine, but this isn't John Wick, because he kills terrible people and the world is fine without them in it. In Oldboy, the antagonist goes so far and beyond to get the main character. Holy shit. Alright, future me, bleep all of that. But it's all subjective. You can look at Ellie and think she's the good force in The Last of Us 2, but we all know the truth. She never truly cared enough. Just did what she did because Tommy kept showing up and she didn't even finish the job. Poor Joel is turning in his grave. Because, okay, hang on. Who would really come after Ellie? The only other character that would avenge Abby was knocked out. They were asleep. They weren't even fucking aware of what's happening. So if Ellie kills Abby, then who's gonna? Like nobody better say the circle of revenge or whatever, because there was no circle. It's a fucking line. It's a straight line, and then that's it. That's the ending. It's a line that goes. It goes like this: Abby kills Joel. Then Abby spares Ellie, and then Ellie kills Abby. Boom. That's it. That's a straight line. There's really okay. I'm good. Anyway, please like and subscribe. Thank you.